Well, it's a very, very, very damp Friday morning. And as far as I can gather, it's the same thing in Donegal, is it, Pat? Pat McGarry?
That's it. How's it going, Jude? It certainly is. It's very, very blustery here. My house is surrounded by trees and they're swaying like hell here. So it's very dark. I really should be putting on lights here, but anyway, it's a real winter's Donegal morning.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as somebody said on Twitter the other day, we're now less than 21 days from the evenings getting longer.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't forget
this is the fourth. We're 17 days away from it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, let's get straight to important matters, and they really are quite important too. And the first story we're going to look at has featured in all the papers, on radio, on TV, Irish radio and Irish TV certainly, and it is the case of Brian Stanley TD, Sinn Féin TD, that is. And it's all because of two tweets he put out. The first one he put out, I think, was in 2017, actually. And they backwound to that one. And the one in 2017 said, Yippee, it was when Leo Varadkar was made leader. And Brian Stanley put out the tweet, Yippee for the Tory. I think he means for the Tory, yeah. That is a right-wing person. It's Leo. You can do what you like in bed, but don't look for a pay rise the next morning. So that was his 2017 tweet.
Yeah.
And then he had the tweet that got people going initially, at least some people, and it was about Kilmichael and Narrow Water. And it said exactly this. Kilmichael, 1920, and Narrow Water, 1979. The two IRA operations that taught the elective of the British Army and the establishment the cost of occupying Ireland. Pity for everyone, they were such slow learners. So what do you think of those two tweets, Pat?
Joe, you know, I'm really of the belief that there's a sort of it's almost like Jeremy Corbyn in Britain. It really is. I personally, I think the one about Kilmichael, he shouldn't really have gone with it. If you're a TD and you're reaching out and you want to make all the rest of it. But Jude, when you study it, it is almost, it's ridiculous the controversy that's going up about it. He made an observation or gave an opinion. He didn't. They're trying to make out that he was glorifying it. If you read the thing, in any man's English, he said, it's a pity it took them so long to learn. You know, there seems to be a sort of an agenda from the media establishment in Ireland now that any centre. Now, hey, when you consider the fact that they had to trawl back to 2017 to find another one, and I think the point of that one is actually there was a guy yesterday, Senator Brian Warfield, I think, who is gay, was on, and he said he didn't find that he didn't. He was actually supporting Stanley. Basically, it was Stanley, I think, in that point. And if you want to sit down, it was Leo was liberal on matters of sexual orientation and homosexuality and what do you call it, marriage. But that when it comes to issues of economics, he's a right-wing Tory. Okay, maybe he could have put it a better way, but it's in actual fact what he's saying stands up to the truth. So they're trying to make something of that as well. Now, I haven't said that. I don't think he should have bothered his backside publishing either of them. But if there's a cool controversy about a tweet, like he didn't glorify. Had he said, where this was a great operation by the IRA and fair play to them, I'm so proud of the boys and so on, that would have been glorifying it. He didn't do that. And his remark about you can do whatever what you want in bed, but whatever, but don't ask for a pay raise. Okay, maybe there's a connotation there, but the point he was making was, I think, totally fair one. Leo he was talking about people who get up early in the morning, and his whole agenda is seriously right wing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I must say I agree with much of what you say, Pat. I think for a start, with you, I'd agree. Both tweets, in my opinion, are 100% valid in the sense that what they have to say makes sense to me. That certainly Leo in sexual matters would be a liberal, but in economic matters, pay rises, etc., is a right-wing politician.
By the way, just to cut you across again, and I think we're coming to, Yes, have you heard Leo yesterday in the Dáil about his justification for not giving student nurses a pay raise? But go
Yeah,
ahead.
hold on, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But I think he was dead right in both cases. Leo is obviously gay, and also he is very right wing in terms of paying people. This thing about Kilmichael and Narrow Water, it stands up all the way. I mean, the auxiliaries were the most hated and brutal force in Ireland at the time. And likewise, the parachute regiment were the most brutal and feared regiment in Ireland at the time.
Yeah.
So the comparisons are obvious. The numbers are almost exactly the same. 17 British auxiliaries killed, 18 British parachute regiment people killed. And he's right also about the slow learning. Well, we're all slow learners. I mean, the troubles continued for a full 15 years or more after Narrow Water. So the sentiment in or what he's saying is exactly right. However, I don't think I don't think he should have used that kind of language. Not because I think that kind of language is wrong, frankly, because I think that's the kind of language a lot of us use, or the man in the pub would use if he was talking. So it's unvarnished language. It's not the insulting language, it's unvarnished language. But there are people, there are liberal people, almost, dare I say it, certainly language police, if not thought police, who patrol the internet looking for people that they can take out and decapitate. And I speak from experience. Brian Stanley has closed his Twitter account, so he has been essentially Twitter decapitated. It reminds me of the thing about, I think it's in My Fair Lady maybe, where the guy says, the French don't really care what you do as long as you pronounce it correctly.
Yeah.
You know, these guys, they don't mind what they almost don't mind what you do, but they certainly are very, very strong on how you express yourself. And I mean, the same thing that happened with regard to Barry McElduff. Barry McElduff's record on sectarianism wasn't looked at. All it was looked at was this image. And likewise with Brian Stanley, the content, the truth or otherwise of what he said is ignored, completely ignored. But what is front and center is the kind of language he used, which I would agree with you is hostage to fortune's sake.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Jude, I like that term you used there, the language police. That is becoming ridiculous. You know, Jude, I think if we start going through every Fine Gael member's Twitter account and every Fianna Fáil member's account, you know, I'd love to know that would dig up. But here, by the way, you said something else as well that just jarred a memory. Sean O'Friel wrote to Arlene Foster and said there would have to be a political price type thing to pay for this. You know, well, he's the Can Corda. I don't see for a minute what right he had to take that.
But he's above politics.
Yes, exactly. You know, and Alan Kelly of Labour, if it was one of my members, I wouldn't have said it. Look, Jude, let's get this clear. If we want to get it down to brass tacks, if tomorrow morning you sent a reporter to walk the streets of Derry and asked them, or West Belfast, and asked them about the what Stanley had said, I would say you would, if you predict in the West Bank, and you would get 98% agreement. Now it's lovely for these guys living down in south of Ireland and the safety of their homes in Carlow and Laois or wherever the hell it is, you know. But these the people in the north who have to deal with the parachute regiment and all the rest of it, you know, have a very different view. And all this sort of outrage about our mark. Stanley's point was actually a 100% accurate. You know, but yeah, you see, it's all maybe it's part of the politics now. There does seem to be, we're going like America. It's now either you're on the establishment side, basically Fine Gael, or you're on the center side, and I think there's a growing divide. Fianna Fáil are almost getting squeezed out on this debate. O'Friel is actually a Fianna Fáil, by the way, but it's getting very divisive. And I think a growing number of people like this sort of ridiculous thing now. It's almost you should, look. Hey, there was a thing on social media the other day. Remember Luke Kelly, the folk singer?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
the Doublers.
Yeah.
His father, as a 10-year-old, was shot in the 1920s going across the bridge. And you're nearly expecting, somebody from Fine Gael and the establishment come on and say, how dare you, put that photograph up. The British soldier was only doing his duty, when he shot that 10-year-old. No, it's getting ridiculous that any sort of indication of Republican or being Irish is almost against the pale for these people. It's almost this West Britism gone crazy.
I actually think, Pat, I'd agree with that, but I think it goes wider than that. I think it's there's a whole thing where you cannot use certain words, you cannot use certain language. Now, see, I'm slightly split in my thinking in this. On the one hand, I think at times it drives me crazy, and I really get sick of it, the way that they went after Barney Michael Duff, the way they're now going after Stanley. It really makes me sick, because I can't believe that they haven't considered the thing in the round, that they haven't looked at the man's record of what he does, haven't looked at what he actually said. I just can't believe that. But the other part of me says, there are words and terms that we use or used in the past, which today would be genuinely offensive. I watched that movie on Netflix last night, the second time actually, All the Way. It was with LBJ and being elected after Kennedy was shot. And in it, he's pushing for this civil rights bill for black people. Now, the language he uses about black people in private would be unacceptable, totally unacceptable. And I think you and I would probably feel it was unacceptable too.
Yeah.
Now, supposing you had somebody who used, and I hate to, no, I'm not going to say the N-word. If somebody was to use in a tweet the word nigger, but have it in a situation where they were using it ironically, or they were obviously showing their belief that black people were just as, equal people with anybody else, obviously. I think we wouldn't like to see that. So, as I say, I'm slightly torn. I tell you,
but Jude, I think you're expressing pretty much where I'm at as well. I don't think Stanley should have published it.
No, I don't think so.
What I think this is a manufactured controversy, blown out of massive proportion for political purposes.
Pat, I wonder. Here's my Machiavellian thinking. I don't think we've discussed this before. There wouldn't be the possibility that Sinn Féin occasionally allows people like Stanley to say something or write something like this, which they know will create a furore, but actually it will reassure people who are a bit fearful that perhaps Sinn Féin have slipped back on their Republican credentials. Would that be too Machiavellian?
Jude, I have a friend who's a serious Republican, and he is going ape about this. He is saying, I don't understand why Mary Lou and people like that are insisting that he apologize. He says, apologize for what? So there's the other side of it as well, like the old sort of, I won't call him, because this guy wasn't an IRA, he's just a big Republican. And he's seriously angry with the leadership that your man Stanley had to apologize.
Do you think that they might in fact it might have been a strategy? A deliberate strategy?
Shut up, I wouldn't rule that out. I genuinely wouldn't rule that out.
There's a lot of people
because I think there's back to the point I was making earlier, Jude. I think there's which side of the barricade are you on? I think there's a growing number of people saying they're getting really pissed off at this non-stop, almost the strategy from Fine Gael, and now their own Fine Gael supporters love that. Yeah, give it to those thugs and all the rest. And then there's other people on the other side, particularly young people, are saying this non-stop. We should almost be wee West Brits. A lot of people are actually getting pissed off at it. I'm one of them, by the way. Just get that on the record. I'm starting to find every time now you're almost not allowed to. You're almost supposed to take the side of the Sunday Independent and the Tory Party. Jude, hold on, just before we leave this. Pat Finucane, the murder on Monday. Brandon Lewis brazenly stood up and said there's going to be no inquiry, no public inquiry, and the Brits don't apologise for their actions. It took 20 years to get an apology for Bloody Sunday, where won the whole world's media, and there's no apology for all the how many British soldiers or security personnel spent time in jail for murders of nationals. But we don't hear about that at all, and our establishment doesn't play any. They give this milk and water response when there's someone. Hey, Jude, Pat Finucane, Simon Coveney has expressed disappointment. You know, big deal.
Well, I think maybe you're making a comparison between Brian Stanley, who wrote a tweet which may or may not have been sort of politically correct, and the likes of the British government, who didn't send out a tweet. They sent out soldiers that shot people in broad daylight, and 20 years later they made an apology. So, I mean, one is an apology for a relative, well, an accurate but annoying tweet, and the other is a government that shot its own citizens.
But see, they wear suits and ties.
Yeah. I admit, there's a danger with this. I agree with you. You get to a point almost where you are so tired of this. And I think it goes beyond politics, actually. It goes into things like gender, for example. If you're, you better watch yourself, the kind of language you use in terms of anything to do with women and men, or you could get an avalanche of criticism if you've not phrased yourself in the correct fashion. I find myself getting very impatient with that, and it drives you to right-wing things. In fact, I might be like Lord McGuinness. I find myself shouting at people and being barred from the House of Lords.
Bullying, Jude, bullying.
Anyway, I mean, it was certainly was something that has created a great deal of furore. Frankly, if I was Stanley, I would say, you want an apology? Okay, I'm sorry, and then go on. Because I mean, it makes you sick.
Jude, it's manufactured and it's blown out. I'm sticking to that because it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, there's two other stories actually in the Irish Times this morning that I was tempted to talk about. One was Stephen Collins is talking about RTE and political events in this centenary decade. He figures that the RTE is too much on the side of those who were happy to shed blood. He believes in bloodthirst.
Stephen must have definitely drank Kool-Aid of right-wingism or something.
And Dermot Ferreter, the well-known Dermot Ferreter, talks about the popularity of the Crown and about the way people believe that it's the real deal you're getting. You know, people find it difficult to separate what actually happened
from fiction.
I mean, there's a lot of truth in that statement of his, you know. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off the point. Okay, so au revoir, Brian Stanley, bonjour, the doll, and the question of student nurses' pay. They voted on this on Wednesday, did they?
Yeah, Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. Wednesday night, I think it was.
And,
no, Jude, we're out of lockdown. So myself and my dear wife went for a drive yesterday, and I had the radio on, and there was an item come on. I think it was the Claire Burns show about this non-payment of nurses. Now, Jude, I think it is one of the most disgraceful things that any government has ever done. The young student nurses, when the COVID thing came out, there was one girl on, I'll stick with one story. She said she's done something like 1,400 hours. She'd work that out of 40 hours a week over this last 9 months a year. So she was on the front line. At the start, when the COVID came out, these people weren't getting paid, and they were putting their lives on the front line. And they, by the way, they were acting almost full-time nurses. They called them trainee nurses, but they were doing the jobs the exact same as their fellow colleagues, you know, so on. So apparently they got paid for a wee small time, but that was withdrawn. And I think the Shinners and, in fact, all the opposition parties and the bar, the three in government, supported the restoration of payment from the government, who have been seem to be applauding them and standing up in the Dáil. But when it came to actually paying these people, they refused to put the legislation in place. And now Leo Varadkar said the last day that it's under review and they will report by September 2021. In other words, he's kicked the can down the road and he's hoping COVID will be over so that she won't arise.
I don't suppose you know what they are being paid and what they were looking to get paid.
No, I didn't get the detail. It's just that it was disgraceful, Jude, that they refused to pay student nurses. I think they have exploited these people for Jude, this is a pandemic. These people have put their lives in the front line. They didn't know enough, and to treat them so abominably, I actually get quite angry about that.
Oh yeah, I went on to the website, the government website. and the report of the Dáil, and Mick Barry, I gather, from Solidarity, People Before Profit, was the one who was kind of leading the attack on the government for this. And he mentioned some interesting things, that these people, as you've just said, that these people aren't so much trainees as essential workers, you know.
Exactly.
Have them,
They were sort of volunteered onto the front line by no choice.
That's right. And the other thing he raises is that 1 in 6 in the South, 1 in 6 COVID cases are people who are health workers.
Yeah.
So as you say, they're literally putting their lives on the line. They did a survey, according to McBarry, in 2018, and over 70% of the pay of the trainee nurses were thinking of emigrating.
Yeah.
Because in places like Canada and Australia, they pay them good money. They pay 15 euros an hour or 17 euros an hour or whatever the money is that they use there. So what appalls me is the hypocrisy of it. And the same thing happens in England. Everybody talks about what wonderful people they are, what angels they are, and people go out their front door at a certain time and clap. I mean, horse shit is the only word for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Horse shit. Because you're saying, oh, I have so much admiration, I'm going to go to my front door and stand like a ninny and clap. But don't ask me to give them more money. Forget it, you know?
Well, Jude, applause does not pay their bills. It doesn't pay their insurance for their car if they've got one. I doubt if they could afford one. It doesn't pay their rent. It doesn't pay their electricity. You know, that's a ridiculous thing. But Jude, I know it says something about the mentality. It's total exploitation of people who are doing good.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's always been the case. It seems to be in society. If the work you do is sufficiently important, the pay will be appropriately low. I mean, everybody suddenly realized that guys who stack shelves and guys who deliver groceries were really pretty damned important in society. Otherwise, we couldn't have survived it. And yet, nobody says, well, let's do something about the standing that they have, the money that they get at the end of a week or a month.
Yeah.
They just, at the time, they click their tongues and then off that's the end of it. It's a very unjust world, really. And I suppose the thing that galls most is it's hypocritical. I mean, these, as you say, are people who are risking their life. And also, like, they're living in poverty. They try to have part-time jobs, some of them, in order to keep body and soul together.
Jude, that last year there was a guy on, I can't remember, he was the general secretary, Liam, something like that. He was the nursing officer for the Irish nurses, anyway. Yeah. Liam Horan, I think's his name. And he was saying that nurses were so badly treated during the recession, they had their pay cut and whatever. And anyway, bottom line was a vast, as you rightly pointed out some time back, vast majority of them emigrated. There was a real nursing shortage. Now, Leo of Radcare and these people have been involved in some very strange thing. Jude, I have a niece who is a school teacher. She told me that she had, in one class, she came in before the recession. So she was earning $7,000 a year more than the young fella who came in after her because they cut the pay of teachers during the recession. And anyway, but here's the thing. They didn't cut the pay that there was 2 tier TDs. That there was one a group elected at a certain time were on 90,000, and then people come in after were on 70,000. That didn't happen, and they didn't cut it for senior civil servants, and they didn't cut it for the judges, and they didn't cut it for the senators, but they cut it for teachers and nurses, people at the bottom of the we'll call it the sort of pile. There's an ideology there at work that is not nice.
Well, there's only one answer for that, and I'm thinking again now to this All the Way movie that I saw, which charted LBJ in the years of the civil rights, and it was about Martin Luther King and LBJ and other people getting the black population to get out there and vote. And I mean, they paid for with their lives for it, some of them down south. But the only answer to that kind of thing is if you want something changed, two routes. One is violence, and the other is use the vote. I don't understand why care workers, nurses, health workers, why don't they organize themselves? They must be members of a union of some kind.
Yeah.
And why doesn't that union say to anybody who runs for the Dáil or for Parliament, look, are you going to give us whatever you're looking for, whatever decent salary? Get that in writing from them, and say, if you don't do this, we'll not elect you.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there'll be a lot of parties that would be happy enough to go along with that. There are some clearly who wouldn't. Well, let's see who's really going to put their money
Well,
where
I'd say, Jude, see the next time when the election comes along, unless a lot of things change, I think a lot of people on this occasion, I've met quite a few people knowing on this, and they've talked about this, and like everybody's sort of a wee bit disgusted by it. You know, it's Jude. Here we can wrap it up because probably going over the same.
Yeah.
But these are young people. They're badly treated. They put their lives in the front line. The government won't even pay them, but they have the temerity to stand up and give them, clap for them, and give them applause.
Yeah, disgusting. We're back again to hypocrisy. You know, that's exactly
absolutely,
what we started with Stanley. And we're
but Brian Stanley's one about you can do whatever you want in bed, but don't ask for a pay raise. There's your proof.
Okay, the third and final item probably is this from Joe Duffy. Now, I didn't catch this, but it sounds like an interesting story the way you've told it to me.
Yeah, there was a guy on. It was actually my wife again pointed me in that direction. There's a guy on. Apparently, he has multiple sclerosis, and he grows one cannabis plant, and he has to do some. I can't remember butter or something. I can't remember how it works. But anyway, it's for his own use, and apparently the cannabis helps him deal with his multiple sclerosis. His house was raided either last week or earlier this week by Gardaí, who lifted the plant. Not only now does he not have that to treat his MS, but he's also facing the possibility of some sort of summons and court appearance for growing drugs. Now, Jude, in the great scheme of things, on the great crime of things, and everything that's happening in this world, have the Gardaí nothing better to do? Now, had he been distributed, had he been selling it, had he been a drug dealer, I would have understood it. Not a problem. I am japers. Take those guys out as often as you want, as far as I'm concerned. But good God Almighty, is this where we're at in Ireland? That it's become so petty that a guy growing cannabis for his own use for a medical condition is subjected to a raid by Gardaí?
Okay, tell me this. Is growing cannabis against the law?
It is, yeah.
Well, are the Gardaí not just doing their job?
Yeah, but someone, see when the law is enacted, and there's also that famous word. Hold on, Jude. It's called common sense.
Are you saying that in common sense says that in certain cases you don't fulfill your duty of enforcing the law?
Yeah, those. Yeah.
So if the mayor's car is parked in a no parking zone, you give that's okay. That's the mayor.
If he's blocking the road, you summon the same as everybody else. But if his car's parked on the side road, doing nobody's harm, and he's presenting prizes to kids, you use common sense.
Well, what is the purpose of a law if you're going to say, well, people can use their own judgment as to whether or not they actually enforce it?
There are laws that are stupid, and you know it as well. What is someone said? The laws and but hold on. No, the law doesn't cover every circumstance, and a guy growing cannabis for his own use is a circumstance that I would think even the most rabid right winger could say, look, hey, come on, that's a reasonable.
What about if I say, well, look, I'm an old man. I sometimes get very depressed. I'm just growing this plant for my own use. It really cheers me up no end every evening. Would that be okay if the cops came? Would they say,
well, as far as I'm concerned, totally. I'd have no objection whatsoever.
And what about
hold on. As long as it's for your own use, that you're not handing out to kids.
Well, it's against the law, Pat. It's against the law.
Jesus. What do you call it? The Nazis, the Nazis put people in, and that wasn't illegal. So the law, concentration camps.
I don't. I think you've got to face the facts that this is the law, and we're saying, look, the law should be ignored on quite a few occasions. Like I mentioned, me being an old man and getting a wee bit of a cannabis plant so I could use it. What about if I was a middle-aged man and said, Jesus, my life's very stressful. I'm trying to keep my children fed and so on. And I have a wee bit of cannabis here that I use every evening or every weekend or whatever. Would you enforce it there? Or
no.
If you were a young guy, you would say, oh, well, I'm a young guy and I'm still fitting my way in the world. I'm not sure what job I should do, but I really get a lot of consolation out of this cannabis. Or I value my friendship a lot. So when we have a party, we have cannabis around. You know,
No, no,
it's
no,
not.
you cross the line. I don't. If somebody like, as long as it does nobody else's anybody else any harm, and you know, by the way, cannabis hasn't been proved to be anything other than the same. Well, you know, why don't we ban alcohol? Why don't we ban tobacco?
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, no, you're going to tell me it's different. Of course, it's not.
No, it's
Rubbish.
not. I'm not saying it is. Well, so are
No,
you in favor of legalizing all drugs?
no, no, no.
Are you in favor of legalizing cannabis?
I I would regard cannabis. And by the way, I've never. Sorry, unlike Bill Clinton, I took 2 drags about
Did
50
you
years ago.
inhale?
And
Did you
that was
inhale?
I inhaled. Oh, definitely. But it wasn't for me, and I've never touched any kind of drugs since. In fact, I detest the whole idea of drugs. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, there should surely whoever was the guy in Dublin who decided he was going to raid a guy who's got multiple sclerosis, and he was using medicinal cannabis. I'm thinking he should be taken out and shot.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, because you have sympathy with the kids, and certainly MS is an awful, awful disease to have. And the pain from it is excruciating. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure you've known people who have suffered from it.
I do actually.
But, you know what? There really isn't much point in laws if you're not going to enforce them. My own view would be this, Pat. Cannabis should be legalized. I think they should stop this war against drugs because it's bloody pointless. And I think all drugs should be legalized and carefully controlled and sold by the government, and medical expertise should be used there as well. I think if that happened, you would have less deaths from heroin abuse, you'd have less deaths from all sorts of stuff, and you wouldn't have guards, as you say, wasting their time. There's plenty of bloody crime out there for them to fight.
That's exactly my point.
After some kid who's got MS.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm a bit mad actually in my old age. I really believe that. I think this war on drugs is the worst use of police time and effort.
Yeah, but something. There's back then when I'm conflicted on it. If cocaine became sort of like a pandemic, and if heroin was available everywhere, and you sort of
not available everywhere. That's my point.
Well, I take your point. It's not something I've given a massive amount of thought to, but the thought does occur when I do think about it. I've heard quite recently that nowadays when people are even going to a party, it's not uncommon for them to snort a line of cocaine before they go out. It's becoming that common. And that's a drug that distorts a lot of people's, not everybody, but a lot of people's mentality, and they do things with cocaine that they wouldn't do. That's very, very dangerous as far as I would be concerned.
Just like booze.
Booze, yeah.
Which is legal. Thank God. Thank God there's enough sense to keep it legal. Well, I'm looking forward to the day. I hope 2 things I'd like to see happen before I die. One, I'd like to see a united Ireland. And secondly, I'd like to see all drugs legalized. So I can have a...
you can smoke.
Okay, Pat.
All the best. Good luck. Bye. Cheers. Bye.
Okay. Let me see now. Have I done this right? I think